Hey, grade fours. So, welcome to school at home. How strange is that? All right, so what I'm deciding to do, I think, until I find out what everybody has at home. So let's go back. What I would love to know is if everybody has their communicating skills and their workbooks at home. If you do and you can send me a message at some point today, that's great because it will allow me to plan moving forward. In the meantime, what I thought I would do is start the chapter book with you that we were going to start once we came back from Passover break. But it's great. And you get to listen to me read and you can just sit there and chill. So the book we are doing is Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. It's funny. Prepare yourselves to laugh. You're going to have questions to answer along the way, and I'll send the questions to you on Koba, and you'll be able to answer and send them back to me. All right? If there's any problems, again, through Koba, you'll send me a message and let me know in the future. So I'm putting on my reading glasses so that I can read to you, and we're going to start. So chapter 1 is called The Big Winner. I won dribble at Jimmy Fargo's birthday party. All the other guys got to take home goldfish in little plastic bags. I won him because I guessed there were 348 jelly beans in Mrs. Fargo's jar. Really, there were 423, she told us later. Still, my guess was closest. Peter Warren Hatcher is the big winner, Mrs. Fargo announced. At first I felt bad that I didn't get a goldfish too. Then Jimmy handed me a glass bowl. Inside, there was some water and 3 rocks. A tiny green turtle was sleeping on the biggest rock. All the other guys looked at their goldfish. I knew what they were thinking. They wished they could have tiny green turtles too. I named my turtle Dribble while I was walking home from Jimmy's party. I love that name, Dribble. I live at 25 West 68th Street, which is in New York. It's an old apartment building, but it's got one of the best elevators in New York City. There are mirrors all around. You can see yourself from every angle. There's a soft cushioned bench to sit on if you're too tired to stand. The elevator operator's name is Henry Bevelheimer. He lets us call him Henry because Bevelheimer's very hard to say, which is true, it is. Our apartment's on the 12th floor, but I don't have to tell Henry. He already knows. He knows everybody in the building. He's that smart. He even knows I'm 9 and in 4th grade. I showed him Dribble right away. I won him at a birthday party, I said. Henry smiled. Your mother's going to be surprised. Henry was right. My mother was really surprised. Her mouth opened when I said, just look at what I won at Jimmy Fargo's birthday party. I held up my tiny green turtle. I've already named him Dribble. Isn't that a great name for a turtle? My mother made a face. I don't like the way he smells, she said. What do you mean? I asked. I put my nose right down close to him. I didn't smell anything but turtle. So Dribble smells like turtle, I thought. Well, he's supposed to. That's what he is. And I'm not going to take care of him either, my mother added. Of course you're not, I told her. He's my turtle, and I'm the one who's going to take care of him. You're going to change his water and clean out his bowl and feed him and all of that? She asked. Yes, I said. And even more, I'm going to see to it that he's happy. This time my mother made a funny noise, like a groan. I went into my bedroom. I put Dribble on top of my dresser. I tried to pet him and tell him he would be happy living with me. But it actually isn't easy to pet a turtle. They aren't soft and furry, and they don't lick you or anything. Still, I had my very own pet at last. Later, when I sat down at the dinner table, my mother said, I smell turtle. Peter, go and scrub your hands. Some people might think that my mother is my biggest problem. She doesn't like turtles, and she's always telling me to scrub my hands. That doesn't mean just run them under the water. Scrub means I'm supposed to use soap and rub my hands together. Then I've got to rinse and dry them. I ought to know by now. I've heard it enough. I will send the same message to all of you. Wash and scrub your hands many times today, guys. But my mother isn't my biggest problem. Neither is my father. He spends a lot of time watching commercials on TV. That's because he's in the advertising business. These days, his favorite commercial is the one about Juicy-O. He wrote it himself, and the president of the Juicy-O company liked it so much, he sent my father a whole crate of Juicy-O for a family to drink. It tastes like a combination of oranges, pineapples, grapefruits, pears, and bananas. And if you want to know the truth, I'm getting pretty sick of drinking it. But Juicy-O isn't my biggest problem either. My biggest problem is my brother, Farley Drexel Hatcher. He is 2.5 years old. Everybody calls him Fudge. I feel sorry for him if he's going to grow up with a name like Fudge, but I don't say a word. It's none of my business. Fudge is always in my way. He messes up everything he sees, and when he gets mad, he throws himself flat on the floor, and he screams, and he kicks, and he bangs his fists. The only time I really like him is when he's sleeping. He sucks 4 fingers on his left hand and makes a slurping noise. When Fudge saw Dribble, he said, "Ooh, see?" And I said, "That's my turtle, get it? Mine. You don't touch him." Fudge said, "No touch." Then he laughed like crazy, which I am assuming means there are problems on the way. So I'm going to read one more chapter, and then I'm going to send you some questions that you'll be able to answer as well about the first 2 chapters, and that's how we'll do this in the meantime, okay? Chapter 2, Mr. and Mrs. Juicy-O. Just to say, if there are words you don't understand when you listen to it, you can always send me messages and ask what they mean if you don't have a dictionary, and I can tell you what they mean. One night, my father came home from the office all excited. He told us Mr. and Mrs. Yarby were coming to New York. He's the president of the Juicy-O company. He lives in Chicago. I wondered if he'd bring my father another crate of Juicy-O. If he did, I'd probably be drinking it for the rest of my life. Just thinking about it was enough to make my stomach hurt. My father said he invited Mr. and Mrs. Yarby to stay with us. My mother wanted to know why they couldn't stay at a hotel like most people who come to New York. My father said they could, but he didn't want them to. He thought they'd be more comfortable staying with us. My mother said that was about the silliest thing she had ever heard. But she fixed up Fudge's bedroom for our guests. She put fancy sheets and a brand new blanket on the hide-a-bed. That's a sofa that opens up into a bed at night. It's in Fudge's room because that used to be our den. Before he was born, we watched TV in there, and lots of times Grandma slept over on the hide-a-bed. Now, we watch TV right in the living room, and Grandma doesn't sleep over very often. My mother moved Fudge's crib into my room. He's going to get a regular bed when he's 3, my mother says. So a crib, a baby bed, right? The kind that have the bars all around. Remember that. There are a lot of reasons I don't like to sleep in the same room as Fudge. I found that out 2 months ago when my bedroom was being painted. I had to sleep in Fudge's room for 3 nights because the paint smell made me cough. For one thing, he talks in his sleep. And if a person didn't know better, a person could get scared. Another thing is that slurping noise he makes. It's true that I like to hear it when I'm awake, but when I'm trying to fall asleep, I like things very quiet. When I complained about having to sleep with Fudge, my mother said, "It's just for 2 nights, Peter." "I'll sleep in the living room," I suggested, "on the sofa, or even a chair." "No," my mother said, "you will sleep in your bedroom, in your own bed." There was no point in arguing. Mom wasn't going to change her mind. She spent the day in the kitchen. She really cooked up a storm. She didn't really cook up a storm. It's an expression that means she cooked a lot. She used so many pots and pans, Fudge didn't have any left to bang together, and that is one of his favorite pastimes, banging pots and pans together. A person can get an awful headache listening to that racket. Right after lunch, my mother opened up the dinner table. We didn't have a separate dining room. When we have company for dinner, we eat in one end of the living room. When Mom finished setting the table, she put a silver bowl filled with flowers right in the middle. I said, "Hey, Mom, it looks like you're expecting the president or something." "Very funny, Peter," my mother answered. Sometimes my mother laughs like crazy at my jokes. Other times, she pretends not to get them. And then there are times when I know she gets them, but she doesn't seem to like them. This was one of those times. So I decided no more jokes until after dinner. I went to Jimmy Fargo's for the afternoon. I came home at 4 o'clock. I found my mother standing over the dinner table mumbling to herself. Fudge was on the floor playing with my father's socks. I'm not sure why he likes socks so much, but if you give him a few pairs, he'll play quietly for an hour. Kind of like my dogs. I said, "Hi, Mom, I'm home." "I'm missing 2 flowers," my mother said. I don't know how she noticed that 2 flowers were missing from her silver bowl, because there were at least a dozen of them left. But sure enough, when I checked, I saw 2 stems with nothing on them. The stems are the green parts that go into the vase. "Well, don't look at me, Mom," I said. "What would I do with 2 little flowers?" So we both looked at Fudge. "Did you take Mommy's pretty flowers?" my mother asked him. "No take," Fudge said. He was chewing on something. "What's in your mouth?" my mother asked. Fudge didn't answer. "Show, Mommy." "No show," Fudge said. "Oh, yes." My mother picked him up and forced his mouth open. She fished out a rose petal. "What did you do with Mommy's flowers?" She raised her voice. She was really getting upset. Fudge laughed. "Tell Mommy." "Yum," Fudge said. "Yummy, yummy, yummy." "Oh no," my mother cried, rushing to the telephone. She called Dr. Cone. She told him that Fudge ate 2 flowers. Dr. Cone must have asked what kind, because my mother said, "Roses, I think, but I can't be sure. One might have been a daisy." There was a long pause while my mother listened to whatever Dr. Cone had to say. Then Mom said, "Thank you, Dr. Cone." She hung up. "No more flowers," she told Fudge. "You understand?" "No more," Fudge repeated. "No more, no more, no more." My mother gave him a spoonful of peppermint-flavored medicine, the kind I take when I have stomach pains. If you remember in the book Freckle Juice that we read last year, when Freckle Juice made that disgusting, his name's not Freckle Juice, but when he made that disgusting mixture of that juice and drank some of it, and then his stomach hurt, his mom gave him the same peppermint medicine. So my mother gave me a spoonful of peppermint-flavored medicine, the kind I take when I have stomach pains. Then she carried Fudge off to have his bath. Leave it to my brother to eat flowers. I wondered how they tasted. Maybe they're delicious and I don't know it because I've never tasted one, I thought. I decided to find out. I picked off 1 petal from a pink rose. I put it in my mouth and tried to chew it up, but I couldn't do it. It tasted awful. I spit it out in the garbage. Well, at least now I knew I wasn't missing anything great. Fudge ate his supper in the kitchen before our company arrived. While he was eating, I heard my mother remind him, "Fudgy's going to be a good boy tonight. Very good for Daddy's friends." "Good," Fudge said. "Good boy." "That's right," my mother told him. I changed and scrubbed up while Fudge finished his supper. I was going to eat with the company. Being 9 has its advantages. My mother was all dressed up by the time my father got home with the Arby's. You'd never have guessed that Mom spent most of the day in the kitchen. You'd also never have guessed that Fudge ate 2 flowers. He was feeling fine. He even smelled nice, like baby powder. Mrs. Yarby picked him up right away. I knew she would. She looked like a grandmother. That type always makes a big deal out of Fudge. She walked into the living room cuddling him. Then she sat down on the sofa and bounced Fudge around on her lap. "Isn't he the cutest little boy?" Mrs. Yarby said. "I just love babies." She gave him a big kiss on the top of his head. I kept waiting for somebody to tell her Fudge was no baby, but no one did. My father carried the Yarby suitcase into Fudge's room. When he came back, he introduced me to our company. This is our older son, Peter, he said to the Yarbys. I am 9 and in 4th grade, I told him. How do, Peter? Mr. Yarby said. Mrs. Yarby just gave me a nod. She was still busy with Fudge. I have a surprise for this dear little boy, she said. It's in my suitcase. Should I go get it? Yes, Fudge shouted. Go get, go get. Mrs. Yarby laughed as if that was the best joke she ever heard. I'll be right back, she told Fudge. She put him down and ran off to find her suitcase. She came back carrying a present tied up with a red ribbon. Ooh, Fudge cried, opening his eyes wide. Goody! He clapped his hands. Mrs. Yarby helped him unwrap his surprise. It was a wind-up train that made a lot of noise. Every time it bumped into something, it turned around and went the other way. Fudge liked it a lot. He likes anything that's noisy. I said, that's a nice train. Mrs. Yarby turned to me. Oh, I have something for you too. Peter, I reminded her. My name is Peter. Yes, well, I'll go get it. Mrs. Yarby left the room again. This time she came back with a flat package. It was wrapped up too, red ribbon and all. She handed it to me. Fudge stopped playing with his train long enough to come over and see what I got. I took off the paper very carefully in case my mother wanted to save it, and also to show Mrs. Yarby that I'm a lot more careful about things than my brother. I'm not sure she noticed. My present turned out to be a big picture dictionary, the kind I liked when I was about 4 years old. My old one is in Fudge's bookcase now. I don't know much about big boys, Mrs. Yarby said, so the lady in the store said a nice book would be a good idea. A nice book would have been a good idea, I thought, but a picture dictionary? That's for babies. I've had my own regular dictionary since I was 8, but I knew I had to be polite, so I said, thank you very much, it's what I've always wanted. I'm so glad, Mrs. Yarby said. She let out a long sigh and sat back on the sofa. My father offered the Yarbys a drink. Good idea, Mr. Yarby said. What'll it be? My father asked. What'll it be? Mr. Yarby repeated, laughing. What do you think, Hatcher? It'll be Juicy-O. That's all we ever drink. Good for your health. Mr. Yarby pounded his chest. Of course, my father said, like he knew it all along. Juicy-O for everyone, my father told my mother. She went into the kitchen to get it. While my father and Mr. Yarby were discussing Juicy-O, Fudge just disappeared. Uh-oh. Just as my mother served everyone a glass of Mr. Yarby's favorite drink, he came back. He was carrying a book, my old worn-out picture dictionary, the same as the one the Yarbys just gave me. See, Fudge said, climbing up on Mrs. Yarby's lap. See, book. I wanted to vanish, which means disappear. I think my mother and father did too. See, book. Now Fudge held it up over his head. I can use another one, I explained. I really can. That old one is falling apart. I tried to laugh. It's returnable, Mrs. Yarby said. It's silly to keep it if you already have one. She sounded insulted, like it was my fault she bought me something I already had. Mine, Fudge said. He closed the book and held it tight against his chest. Mine, mine, mine. It's the thought that counts, my mother said. It was so nice of you to think of our boys. Then she turned to Fudge. Put the book away now, Fudgy. Isn't it Fudgy's bedtime? My father hinted. Oh yes, I think it is, my mother said, scooping him up. Say goodnight, Fudgy. Goodnight, Fudgy, my brother said, waving at us. That's where I'm going to stop for now with the book, right where he's ready to fall asleep. I want you to think about everything that we've discovered about him already, and I want you to imagine all the problems that he's going to create, because they are unimaginable, and that's what makes this book so amazing. So listen to it, write down any words that you don't understand, send me any messages, and the next time I see you, which is on Friday, we'll pick up and then I'll send you some questions and you'll send back the answers to me on Koba. Have a great day, guys. Take care of yourselves. See you soon. Bye.